What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Titans Rundown. I am your host, Micah McCamey, and we have so much to get into this episode. Because this episode, as you can tell by the thumbnail and the title, this is not going to be anything about what's going on with the Titans right now. There is a lot, and I will talk about it next week. But this video is supposed to be looking back on the good times of whenever the core of Vrabel, Derek, and Ryan Tannehill were working. So, me personally, I'm very grateful for this dude. I'm grateful for Vrabel, and I am grateful for Ryan Tannehill. I know yesterday's video about Vrabel would say otherwise, but my thing about Vrabel, the only reason that I was so passionately against Vrabel in that episode was because I see so many people right now talking about how idiotic this was by the Titans, and I wanted to give a very obvious and clear statement of, well, in defense of the Titans, I didn't want it to just completely, I didn't want everyone to just completely be brainwashed into thinking that this is an idiotic move that had no merit to happen. But I just wanted to put that out there because I am grateful for Vrabel, and I probably should have said that in yesterday's episode, but that's just how I feel. But anyway, and yes, I do stand by Rand Carthen still. That does not mean that I am all for. That doesn't mean that I'm all for. That I would ever have been all for getting rid of Rand Carthen and keeping Vrabel. But anyway, so before we get into some of the best parts of this episode, because there are a lot of really good things to come out of this episode, let's talk about this 2 to 3 minute section and what else is going on apart from Titans football. Okay, so yo, get this. Nico has the 5th best odds to win the Heisman next year. It's a great time to be a Tennessee Vols fan, dude. If I was trying to get one of my friends to become a Vols fan, this is the time that I would do it right now. Cause times are not gonna get better until we get another once in a generation quarterback talent. Nico, I think, is 100% the guy. Because unlike Joe Milton, he was actually able to figure out how to put up points on the board and wasn't just he was able to find a way to. I'm trying to think how can I describe this? He wasn't like Joe who would just sit in the pocket and try and find a receiver, because I'll admit it, in defense of Joe Milton and in defense of Nico's passing stats, the receiving core was not that good this year. I 100% understand that. But Nico was able to find a way to still put points up on the board, even though the receiving core was bad. He could just he was finding ways to do it with his legs. He is the guy. And also, I'm trying to get myself some of that NIA apparel. Y'all know what I'm talking about if you're on Instagram. I want it. I want it bad, and I will. And I tell you this, I will not wear the Hawaiian shirt in the next episode if I do end up getting it by next week. Or whatever episode I have where I end up getting the NIA apparel, I will wear the NIA apparel in that episode. But anyway, so dude, also let's talk about how we've only had one dude nominated for an award this year. We only had Derrick Henry go to the Pro Bowl, which I was kind of upset about. I thought Danico Autry and Harold Landry deserved it, honestly, because Harold Landry and Danico Autry both had double-digit sack seasons. And I thought that Harold Landry's performance against the Dolphins would have put them on the map, but whatever. So, um, oh yeah. Also, dude, I love the Bills, honestly. Like, if there was any other team that if I was held at gunpoint, I was just like, and they were just like, you can't be a Titans fan anymore. Who do you want to be a fan of? I would say the Buffalo Bills. Actually, no, I would say the Detroit Lions, but then I would say the Buffalo Bills. Because I like Josh Allen, and I love their fan base. Like, but yeah. Anyway, so absolutely wild, unscripted, just section right there, honestly. But because I didn't know what to say, because I want to get into the main topics of today's episode. But anyway, that's it for the 3-minute section. If you watched that, thank you. And if you didn't, then whatever. I guess you're not a real fan. But anyway, I'm completely messing around, obviously. But going on to the Titans themselves. So I'm gonna talk about the Jags Titans game briefly, but then like right after that, I'm immediately snapping straight into talking about this dude right here, not Jeffrey Simmons. Sorry, buddy, but I'm gonna jump straight into talking about Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and Mike Vrabel, because they it's guaranteed for one of them, but they may have very well played their last games as Titans and coached their last games as Titans. I mean, I know that Vrabel 100% did coach his last game as a Titan. I know that Derrick Henry did play his last game as a Titan. Tannehill may end up playing again, but he's not going to start. So, anyway, talking about the game, that was great. Where was that offense all year? Where was that play calling? Like, where was all of that? Like, where was Tim Kelly getting creative with the play calls and making big plays whenever it was needed? Where was the defense just absolutely being as clutch as they possibly could be? Like, where was all of this? This is what I thought the Titans were going to be going into week 1. I did not think that we would be bad for the entire year and then immediately turn into these Tennessee Titans during the last week of the season. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, if we would have played like that every single week, we probably would have had my record prediction probably would have been correct, 11-6. But, past is the past, can't control that anymore. So let's just move on straight to the rest of the game. So Tim Kelly had the best called game that he's had all year. And defense again, they may have not played like amazing or lights out or anything, but they played clutch. Tannehill did enough. Now, he did throw a really bad interception, don't get me wrong, but he did enough to where the Titans were able to win. Derrick Henry had his swan song game. Absolutely amazing play by the King. And we also got to see a little bit of a passing of the torch moment. Spears was showing that he can be the number one running back next year in the Titans depth chart, not in the entire league, obviously. But so oh yeah, also the special teams, still there were a little bit of problems, like Ty Zettner muffing a snap, but apart from that, special teams looked fine, didn't do anything to completely destroy the game for us, so that was good. Also, I'll be honest, I did really care about it in the moment, but I don't really care anymore about the draft pick, because we were only going to go up one spot if we did end up losing, so there's no real point in it at that point, but it's fine. Sorry about that. I've been talking a lot, and I had just recorded the Vrabel episode, the Vrabel video right before this. So I am a little my throat is struggling just a little bit, but it's just got to get through just for tonight because I will not be talking as much tomorrow. Let me tell you that. All right. So, now that I've talked about my thoughts on the game, yes, those were all my thoughts. I didn't really have that much else to say because there was nothing else to say. Derrick Henry played really good. Defense was clutch. Offensive play calling was great. Tannehill did enough. But anyway, now we're going to get on to the fun part of today's episode. We're going to go take a look back on some of the best moments of the Titans that are probably leaving. Derrick Henry is definitely gone after this year. I can guarantee you that. Let me think. Ryan Tannehill is not going to be the starter next year, obviously. Oh man, why am I blanking? Vrabel's already gone, and Danico Autry. I think that some people are leaving that out. He's not expected to re-sign, so this is also his last season as a Titan, probably. So let's talk about this. Okay, so let's go over the one that probably most people won't think about as much. Danico Autry. As you can tell, I put him in the thumbnail because, he's probably going to be gone. Combine that with the fact that, he was one of the biggest parts of it. I put Big Jeff in there because, to recognize the modern Titans now. So, yeah, anyway, also, so Danico Autry, most of his great moments came from this year. Whenever he was like the guy against Seattle, like that was a great moment. How about all of his 2021, 2022, he had some big moments. Like he was always like I can't pick out like specific plays, but he was always just a monster on the defensive line. And he had always just been consistent and solid. And I really appreciate that as a Titans fan because we are not the most familiar with consistency. So, that's Danico Autry for you. I can't name any specific plays, but obviously he did have an impact on the Titans' run of very good. I'm not going to say greatness because they didn't win a title or anything, but anyway, so I'm going in the order of which ones mean the most to me. We're going to Ryan Tannehill next. Now, obviously, I could just completely troll here and be like, "Oh yeah, the Cincinnati game, the wild card game against the Ravens, his game against the Saints," because that's what the cool thing is to do right now. But dude, I can't do it. I got to talk about this. Now there is let's talk about this year. He played out of his mind against maybe not out of his mind, but he played very well against the Chargers. Probably his best game of the year, of the past 2 years, honestly. Except for the Texans game. Don't think I forgot about that. We'll get to that later. Or from 2 years ago, but not the first one, the second one. So that's probably the best moment from this year, and the way that he very graciously handled the fact that Levis was starting over him and didn't throw a fit about it and be like, "I want to be traded. I want to be cut." He didn't do any of that bull crap. He was just a good mentor to Levis, and I really appreciate that. Let's talk about 2022. I feel bad for him because he was injured for most of this year. So I'm not too sure if I can say that much. Oh, the Packers game and Thursday Night Football against the Packers, he was very solid. He had a really, really bad pick, but he was throwing it across, but he was making big throws at big times. You got to appreciate that. That's probably the only one that I can point out because of how little he did play that year. How about the time that he came back in that Chargers game and almost led us to a comeback win, but then Justin Herbert torched our secondary and we couldn't do anything about it, and Tannehill couldn't do anything about it. 2020 or sorry, 2021. Now this was the biggest year for Tannehill. Obviously, don't even like the Texans game when he threw like 4 touchdowns. Like that was great. That's Tannehill for you. He threw 4 touchdowns in the last week of the season against the Texans, but then a few weeks earlier against the Texans, he threw 4 interceptions. Like that's the Tannehill experience just summed up for you. So, we got to also talk about how he put the team on his back after this dude got hurt, and we're grateful for that. And in 2019, him coming in for Mariota, I need to get all these dudes in at once. So like him coming in for Mariota and lighting a spark in the team whenever we needed it most was always great. And the Chiefs game from that year, the first one, not the AFC Championship, the Chiefs game, he played out of his mind. The stats won't tell you, but he was doing everything on the field. And again, I'm very grateful for that. And he got us to the AFC Championship. He was the quarterback behind that. So very grateful for Tannehill. Even though I had problems with him, I still appreciate the good stuff that he did for our team. Now Mike Vrabel. Obviously, I'm going to save this guy for last, but okay, so Mike Vrabel. So I can't really pick out specific moments, but let's talk about probably probably the only moment I can think of is whenever he went for it on 4th and 5 against the Eagles, which led to an overtime win against them in 2018. Like that was probably the best moment that I can remember of his coaching stuff. Like he didn't coach Jeffrey Simmons stopping Josh Allen on 4th and 1. He didn't coach like he wasn't like calling stuff like that. But again, Vrabel brought solid consistency and stability to the Titans, which I really am massively grateful for. Like he did all of this stuff and was able to show us what it's like to win. Like now, obviously, do we have to evolve? Do we have to move on? Yes, but he still did so much for the Titans. And I am so grateful that Vrabel was able to do everything that he did as head coach and was able to finally bring a winning culture to the Titans. Hopefully that continues with the next guy, who I hope is Bobby Slowick, but that's a story for next week. Okay, so now the man that has too many moments to be remembered. Let's talk about El Tractorcito, Derrick Henry. Okay, so the moments are going to bring up a lot of this because there are a lot of great moments. So, first off, let's talk about the run that changed the whole path of his career. Before he was the king, he ran that 99-yard touchdown against the Jags and made everybody and their mother look silly on that run. Stiff-arming everybody, just powering his way into that end zone. Like, that was the first moment. Another moment. How about whenever again, I can't remember too much of his moments from the 2019 season, but that's a whole memory of itself. His breakout year where he just absolutely dominated run defenses and nobody could stop him because he actually had a decent O-line. Like, there's just that whole year was an amazing experience to watch. And then the next year, he and then the next year after that. Now let's talk about whenever he went in and won a game in overtime for us against the Ravens. The Ravens have to punt it away. We get a decent return, and Derrick Henry, first play of overtime, takes the ball, runs into the end zone. Just like that, touchdown. And that whole season alone, Offensive Player of the Year, he ran for 2,000 yards. Like, dude, like there's so much. Like I could probably, I'm gonna take up the rest of his episode talking about it, but there are so many more things I could talk about. 2021. Now, unlike Tannehill, whose injuries kind of cut him short, this time some of the injuries, even though he suffered the injuries, he had enough time to make a big impact on the Titans. First off, let's talk about his let's talk about how he why can I not remember? Let's talk about how he had that big run against the Bills and ended up going like 200 yards against the Bills and like 2 touchdowns. Best game that I have seen from Derrick Henry in person, at least. Because, wow, he was dominant, to say the least. And how about and again that season he was absolutely amazing. He was well on his way to getting another 2,000-yard season and maybe even breaking Earl Campbell. No, not Earl Campbell. Eric Dickerson's record for most rushing yards in a year, but he got injured because we ran him into the ground so much. So grateful for that. Grateful for that first half of the year, and then obviously the rest of the year is Tannehill's moments, but apart from the Bengals game, that was Deontay Foreman's moment, who I hope that we do sign. But again, conversation for next week. Then 2022, he had one of those big runs, one of those big vintage runs against the Texans. Oh, wait, before I move on to 2022, I gotta mention 2021 against the Seahawks. He ran the ball and he was able to lead an amazing comeback for the Titans. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let me sip this real quick. Again, sorry. Throat. We're almost there. All right. Okay, so 2022, big run against the Texans, 1,500 yards, great year. Don't really want to talk about that year that much because it was so disappointing and so sad, but you know, that's fine. Now we go to this year, 2023, and first off, 2 vintage moments against the Bengals and against the Jags where he just absolutely torched them on fire. The nasty stiff arm from him against the Saints. Let's also talk about his nasty stiff arms against the Lions and the Bills while we're at it, because I forgot to mention those. His stiff arm against the Bills was my wallpaper for a very long time. But now it's Will Levis jumping over a bunch of defenders. But this is not your episode, Will. This is Derrick Henry's and the rest of the guys, obviously. But this is this like it got me a little emotional thinking about all these moments and then just being like, we're not going to see that again. We're not going to see Derrick Henry break off a big run and score a touchdown whenever he in a Titans uniform, unless he comes back and is like a backup or something like that in his last year or two. And then we're not going to see Ryan Tannehill either completely sell a game or make the game the best game that we've ever watched. And we're not going to see Vrabel again do all of the coaching that he does and be able to get a 1 seed out of a team that didn't have its best player. And we're not going to be able to see Danico Autry get big sacks again. It honestly makes me so sad just thinking about that we're not going to see that again. But that's the point of this. It's reflexive. I'm just happy that we were able to experience all of this over the past 4 years. And that's going to do it all for me. I appreciate all 4 of these dudes. This has been a rundown of the past 4 years of these dudes as Tennessee Titans. I love y'all. And tighten up.